Hey, 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 welcome to episode 121 of the Live Your Fuck Yes Life podcast. I'm Amanda Catherine Loy, and today I have my husband, Kevin, on with me once again for our final episode of the Let's Talk Polyamory series. This is, I think, the fourth one that we've officially done on this, outside of the ones where I came out separately and then we came on and talked about it together, episodes 101 and 105. And I'm really excited about today's topic. Last week, we were talking all about fear of abandonment and fear of replacement. And it was a really heavy one. And halfway through, we were like, we've been talking about, jealousy and what was the second one that we talked about?
Was it jealousy and
perception
and fear of abandonment?
Yeah. And it's like all of these could be perceived as quite negative things, that you have to navigate. And these are all things that you navigate in your day-to-day life anyways. I think poly just tends to heighten them. But they were a lot of your questions because a lot of you are, those are the things that you're struggling with, and it makes sense. Those are the big things that I think we also struggled with individually and together. And so we thought, how nice would it be to round this out with
doing that all again?
No, with talking about the things that polyamory has given us in a really positive sense, our lives, maybe together, individually, whatever comes up. And because a lot of you have also been curious about what that has been. So yeah, we're going to do that today. You ready?
Yeah.
Do you want to start or do you want me to?
No.
I figure we could just go back and forth and share.
No, why don't you go first? It's your podcast.
Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is poly has been such a gift for me in terms of my sexuality. I mean, stepping into polyamory was really rooted for me in exploring my sexuality because I didn't acknowledge to myself that I was bi until I was 28. And by that point, I had been exclusively in monogamous relationships, and I was and am married to a man and had never really had any experiences with women, and had never given myself permission to explore that. And I realized that was something that was really holding me back in terms of feeling like I was embodying my full self. And so poly has been a really beautiful avenue to be able to explore that side of myself that I had never really had the opportunity to explore before. And I'm really grateful for that for me.
This whole time I was sitting here listening to you, not thinking about what my thing would be.
Now you gotta come up with one on the spot.
No, I think it's really been a conduit. And I'm using that awkward word somewhat intentionally. To like rediscovering being in touch with my feelings. Like there's so much of this lifestyle, I suppose is a good word, that involves understanding yourself and your feelings and empathizing with others. And I think a lot of my life, I had lived not like being in touch with my own. Like I think I've always been pretty empathic and understood other people's feelings.
Yeah.
Maybe even taking them on to some degree, but it wasn't something where I was particularly in touch with my own. And I think I was really getting to a place where I was starting to explore that.
Yeah.
Prior to poly, but I think that was like the thing that
ramped it up.
Yeah, that really pushed it forward very quickly.
Yeah. I always say this, and many of you who have had peer support sessions with me around all things poly and E&M know, because I think I've basically said this to every one of you. But I think poly to me is always like a flashlight on our deepest wounds. And it really is. And it forces self-work, self-awareness, and just a deep look inside. And also it forces empathy, I think, in a new way, right? Because we have to learn to empathize with ourselves, working through something that is so taught to us is not appropriate or okay, stepping into non-monogamy. But also, sometimes our partners are going to want to do something or feel pulled towards something that we don't personally understand. And so flexing that empathy muscle is something that becomes really vital, I think, in the context of poly in like a whole new way.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to figure out the pieces that are what is uncomfortable versus painful, and sometimes those bleed together, often maybe,
Yeah.
and it requires a lot of work individually and I think together to like sort that out.
Yeah.
You said something a second ago that as podcast host number two, like I want to like push on,
Yeah, push it.
mostly because
Push it real
not
good.
as a disagreement thing, but I think that you said something that gets tossed around a lot. And I think very rarely do people actually go, well, what the hell does that mean?
What did I say?
You said something to the effect that poly really puts a flashlight on your wounds. And like you sort of touched on like how that might happen,
Yeah.
but very rarely do I feel like that actually gets told to people. Like, what does that mean? Because that's like in all the literature is like it's going to shine a light on your insecurities and all this kind of stuff. But like, there's not like a particular like short statement of like why that happens,
why it happens, or how.
Why and how.
Yeah, because I think the how is a little harder to speak to on a global level because I think it's different for every person, right? Like, because the insecurities that get brought up or bubble to the surface are going to be different depending on our unique stuff, right? But I think anything polyamory exists in the category of same as like kink, or I'm trying to think of anything that would be considered pretty taboo that most people don't explore. Like it's not the norm, right? When you step into a space like that, especially with no prior understanding of how it works or knowledge, it's going to highlight, it's going to be a breeding ground for more situations and circumstances that you don't have the tools for, right? Because you haven't been taught from a young age, like, this is how this goes. These are the, you're going in blind a lot of the time. And yeah, there's literature that you can read about polyamory and some podcasts and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, really, you learn by doing, right? And as you do, things are going to come up that you're not going to have a blueprint or a rule book around how to navigate through that with intention. And because of that, it can be really stormy, like internally stormy as we go through that. And we all have different wounds, from our past traumas, from trust issues we might have, or, past relationships that may have fucked us over, stuff with our familial life. There's, so much in that space. And so those things get highlighted because not only, are we in spaces that we're unaware of, but also like, it's just like self-care on crack is how I always see it. Like or self-awareness and like self-discovery.
I think there's also like a radical acceptance to those things that you have to get to too, right? Like, I think one of the interesting things is like, you kind of just have to accept the unexpected and like know that you're gonna like something's gonna go sideways at some point.
Yeah. I think something that we talked about really early on before we even officially opened up was just like trusting the journey and acknowledging that there were going to be a whole slew of things that we weren't going to be able to predict or know how we would react or want to feel or want to navigate, and that we would just trust in our foundation and be able to work through it in the moment. And I think that served us in a lot of ways. And I think that was also hard in a lot of
fucking naive.
Yeah, super naive in a lot of ways. But, I think stepping into anything new, you're going to have things that you didn't expect that you were going to have to navigate. So does that answer the question?
No, I think so. The part that I was really hoping you would say was more on the like, you're going to be in experiences where you have no frame of reference.
Yeah.
And because you have no frame of reference, it's like you're going to try to search through all these things, or you're going to be relating to all these things, and it's going to dig up a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So I think that's how I would describe it as well. But I feel like that sentiment gets thrown around a lot, but nobody ever really teases apart what that is. They just
Totally.
use it as this piece to move on to the next part of whatever their
Totally, I
argument is.
agree. I had somebody that I was in a session with tell me that they've been doing therapy for like 5-6 years and poly for 6 months. And they feel like they've learned more about themselves in the 6 months they've been doing poly because of poly than in their entire therapy time, which I find really interesting. And I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think it's really important, but I will say that I agree. Like I've been doing like self work and self exploration work, like deep work for, when did I start? Like 3-4 years before we started doing poly. And it was just like, okay, here we go. We're deep diving in the deep end. I didn't know this was a thing. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you confront a lot of things when you talk about someone, especially like going from a monogamous couple or marriage to like, to, something polyamorous. You have to confront a lot of things in the, my partner's going to fuck somebody else,
or
space.
is in love with somebody else.
So I was kind of going maybe probably in order.
Yeah.
Like, like you confront that and it's like, well, once you really kind of work on that though, it's really freeing in a certain sense. Cause like once you've gotten through that, then it's like, okay, the other stuff, whether it's, like trauma or therapy or like whatever the fuck it is, like you've tackled this, what society has already told you is this like crippling thing or life
that you should feel so terribly
thing.
about.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, if I can fuck with that, like, bring it on,
courage.
therapist. Let's fucking go. That's how I talk to my therapist.
I'm sure she really appreciates that.
Yeah, she loves it. She loves my WWE voice.
Okay, I'm just ignoring you. Next one for me, I think that truly the biggest thing that poly has given me is I'm trying to figure out the word I want to use here, like a renewed sense of autonomy and individualism. And I say renewed because while I think we've had at times codependent tendencies because, we've been together for 10 years, overall, I would say that our relationship has been pretty far from codependent. Like, I think I was talking to somebody and they were like, how's it been, in the last year, like, being, cooped up, for so long with your husband? Like, has it just been like a perpetuation of the way things were before and you just spending more time? And I was like,
pulled out your whole murder plot for me.
I was like, no, this is like far. I think we've spent more time together in the last year than we have in our entire 10 years together, potentially.
Well, certainly in like consistent, like congruent time,
I mean, we were so independent prior to this, like, especially in the first 5-6 years of our relationship, like really, really independent. Our schedules from a work standpoint were completely different. And like you would be at work during the day and I would be working on some things during the day, but then usually at work, in rehearsals at night, we'd be 2 ships passing in the night. Often we would like not even see each other at all. We'd have to really, really schedule time to be able to do that. And on top of that, a lot of our social lives, we weren't necessarily hanging out together with our friends. You had your
sometimes
occasionally it would overlap, but often we were, spending time with our friends individually. And, I think we both loved that, like loved having these separate lives that were also very, very deeply intertwined. And yet, you're with somebody for as long as we have been, you develop a pretty like intense attachment. And I think a lot of my sense of self was wrapped up in our relationship. A lot of my feeling like I would be okay was wrapped up in us instead of my own sense of self-worth, instead of my own knowledge of self. And so I think, while in monogamy, we were always like in the space of like, I choose you every day and it's a conscious choice. It's not just inherent because we're married. I think poly reminded us of that in a deeper way, certainly me in a deeper way of like, this is a choice, right? Every relationship we're in is a choice. And I may not always have this human, I will, because I don't ever imagine you not being in my life, but like, I may not always have this human in my corner. And we've had some like harder patches where I've needed to take more of a, individual space, and being able to trust myself has been huge, especially given a lot of my personal history, where so little trust was rooted in myself. I feel like I used you a lot as a crutch and as a rock, in a way that wasn't necessarily healthy early on in our relationship, because I was struggling so much with my eating disorder and my mental health and beyond. So to me, it's been a really beautiful, like a really beautiful way to reassert and refine my true autonomy and move from that space.
Mm.
So that's my next one. What about you, baby boo?
Well, I'm trying to think between. We got. No, we have a couple more, right? Like I don't have to just.
Yeah, you don't have to pick.
So I think one thing is communication. Like, I mean, this maybe dovetails to the feelings thing a little bit, but like, for example, like you and I thought we already had like really fabulous communication.
And now we communicate so differently than we did like a couple years ago.
Yeah, and it's mostly better.
I think it's completely better.
I think it's mostly better.
Okay.
I think. Well, hear me out for a second. Like we're both really strong, independent. To use your parlance from a moment ago, autonomous people, and like we still love each other very much. So like sometimes those characteristics get fiery.
Yeah, we are
butt
fiery
heads
humans.
sometimes. And not that we
Us?
didn't do.
No.
Not that we didn't do that before, but I think
we did it in unhealthier ways before, for sure.
Yeah, but that for some reason, maybe that felt healthier. I don't know.
No, it wasn't.
But I think now overall, it's certainly improved, and I think externally too. I think I have spun up skills from dealing with our growth as a couple and then individually. Like I think putting that out into the world elsewhere, whether that's friendships or new relationships or even stuff at work, I feel like has been a material improvement
for sure life. It's funny, I was gonna say communication for sure too was gonna be one of mine. Like I just think that you and I especially, like we speak to each other now in the way that the other needs to hear it instead of the way that we think it should go. Yes. Like it's very, very, it's very mindful. And we are also super aware of our patterns that have been harmful in the past. And we both do a really, really good job of catching those early on and giving, the way that we argue, the way that we sift through things now is night and day different. And that's been such a gift. And I honestly don't think, and we've also had to communicate about things that we never had to communicate about before. And so our capacity, I think, for being able to have really challenging conversations at times, I think has been really great. Like it's been such a gift. So I'm right there with you on that one. Yeah. I had another one in my brain and then I got all up in the communication train in my head. I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Wound up with another dog.
Was that because of Polly?
No.
Oh, I do remember now. So as humans, I think we are all wired for connection as something that's really, really vital and important, and also community in a way that we've kind of removed ourselves from in a lot of ways. Like the nuclear family has become the norm instead of like tribe living, in that type of way of relying on other people for support when things are really hard and in a big way, right? A lot of people potentially. And I also think that we are hardwired to want to feel loved and seen and supported. And I think that there's such a beautiful thing, and I don't think this is inherently necessary or only possible in poly, because I definitely feel like I experienced this with friends pre-poly. But what I have found is the openness for connection, and also like the way that I have been supported because of the humans that Polly has brought into my life has been different, and in a way that I like I truly thought that I was going to be spending my 30th birthday during the pandemic, feeling really sorry for myself, that it was going to be like a really shitty birthday. And that's not to say that I didn't have faith in you. But
Sounded a little bit
no,
like you didn't have faith in me to pull it off.
It's because what I love about birthdays and really any celebration is the connection piece. It's celebrating it with people that you love, and getting to have people in my corner who are part of our pod. And it was so special to me, you know, and also having the ability and opportunity to feel loved and seen in different ways by different people in my life, different partners, like that has been, it's allowed me to see myself in new light, you know. And it's also been a deep reminder for somebody who's really struggled in the past to love themselves, that I am worthy of loving. And even if those relationships don't last, you know, for whatever reason, the way that I have been loved in those times, like I used to think that there was no way that anyone could love me like other than you. Like I really, really felt that for a long time. And having, you're so cute right now holding my hand, but having, you know, multiple humans in the last few years, like I know that I have been loved and seen and really reveled in, you know, and I know that I will continue to meet people who will love and see me and revel in me. And that, it's a gift I honestly like did not know I needed until I had it. So it's been a big one for me.
Yeah. It's hard to go after that one.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I think that, so I think the proverbial you often takes on, not in like a chameleon way, but just like what's cool in a moment, right? That's kind of who you are, right? Like you and I are like into board games, but not everybody we hang out with are, into board games. So like we have this thing, like we like playing board games. And I think, in 10 years you get into like habits and like this, not in a, this is going to sound really negative, but I don't mean it as negatively as it sounds, but like you get into this narrow self-image of like things or interests or whatever. Yeah. And so I think it is, it's allowed for a lot of exploration into previously enjoyed or loved things, or entirely new ones.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I've always been kind of a closeted nerd. But, I have a partner now who's like into really nerdy shit, like nerdier shit than I'm in. Like I didn't know there was that much nerdy shit.
Yeah.
And
I didn't either.
It's really cool to explore that, and be encouraged in my own nerdiness there. And not to say that you were discouraging in that, but it just wasn't your bag. So it wasn't something that you would like jump in and be like, bro, buy more Gundam models.
Totally. Well, I resonate with that because I'm dating somebody right now who is super like active and outdoorsy. And I remember, yes. And I remember, you're such a shit. I remember, early on in our relationship, really trying and like pushing you in like probably not a great way to be more active, like to work out with me. And like we go on hikes and like that's a big part of our relationship, but like to get you to work out with me is pretty rare, and it's not something that you particularly enjoy or want to do and make time for. And I would push you on that a lot. And again, it's like in monogamy, it's this concept that like our partner has to have all the things we want, and check this box off. I remember like so many friends that I had these like arbitrary lists of things that they needed their partner to be. And, like the reality is that no one person is going to be able to do all of those things. Right. And whether you operate in a monogamous framework or polyamorous framework, that's why we have friends or other partners or beyond. And yeah, I like never until recently, like I haven't really dated somebody who's super active. And I'm really excited about that prospect. Like the idea of like working out with a partner or, you know, like having that be like a cornerstone of our relationship or potential relationship, like is pretty exciting to me. So yeah. Why are you staring at me?
Because I'm trying to figure out who this is.
You know who it is.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that was a good one. Was that you that just went?
Me,
and
yeah.
I piggybacked off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think like going off of that too, you know, again, like you get really accustomed to another person and the dynamic between you and another person. And I think for me, it's also been really expansive from like a sexual standpoint of like, these are I think both in with other people, but also in relation to our relationship. Like, I think it's really opened the door to a lot of like really exciting things that I don't think I personally felt ready to tackle or navigate for a slew of reasons. And also like we've gotten to have some like experiences together that we hadn't had before that has been really exciting. But it's also, you know, it's allowed variety from a sexual standpoint, which I think is great and I really love. So to me, like that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
+1, like, I don't know. I don't feel like I can comment more without like, you know, this podcast getting kicked out of iTunes.
Nah. Yeah, the shit's getting kinky up in here and it's great.
So that's what I was trying to avoid saying.
Why?
Because I didn't want to get kicked out of iTunes.
They won't kick me out.
Who knows?
No, they won't kick me out. Sex.
And that's how the podcast got kicked out of iTunes.
After 3 years.
No, is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We've hit a lot of the big ones.
Yeah, I think we have. Like, I do think that like I feel like all mine start off sounding like negative and then there's like this positive flip to it. But no, I think it's encouraged me to be skeptical. And by this I mean like things I thought I liked, maybe I don't really like, maybe I was just like going along with the flow. And maybe this is like the way that you phrased autonomy things, but it's also like I'll open the door for like other exploration of things, like different types of people or you know, entirely different experiences. Stuff that I never thought I mean, here's a really like you know, PG thing. Like I went to a comic book convention. Like I'm a nerd and I never thought about doing that. You know? Yeah. And so I became skeptical about like, why didn't I ever do that before? Because I fucking like comic books and video games and shit.
I wouldn't. Like, it's interesting you use the word skeptical. I would use it that I would flip it and say, from what I'm hearing from you, it's more like curious and inquisitive. Like why asking yourself more why questions about yourself.
Yeah, but that to me, I am skeptical of my own like bias or assumption about things, like why.
Interesting. I would frame that as curiosity. Interesting. Our difference in verbiage.
Interesting.
Yes.
What's this? So I want to know why you think it's curious as opposed to like, I have this thing and I'm questioning whether or not it is still what I thought it was. To me, that's skepticism, not curiosity. So I had this belief and now I'm questioning it.
Yeah, but you're curious about why that's changing, right? You're digging deeper around
sure, but the skepticism allows
podcast is now going down a different path.
This is how the fights start.
This is how philosophy started. Oh my God, too funny. Okay, should we do one more?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Honestly, you know, I think poly has definitely had its moments of challenge and hard stuff for sure. You know, but I think on the whole, for me at least, it has been such a coming home, you know, and such a beautiful step in my journey and in our journey. You know, and I think the hardest thing for me and also the most important thing for me has been the constant reminder that it gives to always, always, always trust in, and also allow for evolution and growth and change. And, I think as humans, we get really comfortable in a certain dynamic or environment or whatever, and we stick to that. We create assumptions and expectations and rules and whole lives around comfort. And I mean, I could get into the neuroscience of this because I'm a super nerd about it, but it's like our brains like to stay comfortable, and that's why stepping into poly can be a big upset in a lot of ways, because we're breaking the comfort, we're breaking the pattern of comfort, and we are opening the door to trusting in growth and change. And not just that it changes once, but that it has the potential to continuously evolve, which is why communication is so important, because then we can, continue to show up together through all of those changes. But as somebody who, as an individual, feels very, very stunted by sameness and rigidity, it has been a beautiful reminder of the value of growth and of perpetual growth and of constantly checking in with myself and seeing the positive in change, instead of holding on so tightly to what was like a past version of myself or a past important dynamic that I was clutching onto because it gave me some, false sense of security. So I think that's been probably the biggest thing for me in the whole time.
That's it. Almost 3 years of poly, and that was number one.
I think so. Yeah.
All
right, round it out for us.
I don't know that I can beat that.
You don't have to beat it.
Well, I didn't mean to sound competitive. I mean,
beat that shit.
I don't know that I could come up with something better to end it on.
Okay. Well, what would your advice be to somebody who is newer in the poly space? And give them some positive reinforcement.
I just grimaced. I don't know. Sit with it, because and by that I mean don't feel the need to rush. Yeah. Go slow. Take a second and get your bearings.
It can be a really hard thing to do because it's very exciting.
Yes.
At the beginning, but allow yourself to move through it slowly. Yeah.
Thanks for giving my quote there.
You're welcome.
Glad I could set you up to finish it out. That's it.
You had nothing else to say on the phone?
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would probably be one of my biggest things too, is, give yourself the gift of patience and of slowness, and also make sure that you take some time, if you are an individual stepping into poly, to really get clear on what's important to you, your values, and the boundaries that you have in relation to, how you want to interact with people, what's important to you, that kind of stuff. And if you're entering into it with, in the context of being in a couple, that you have a lot of conversations about agreements, and those will change.
Do you give out that Medium article that gets passed around on disentanglement?
No, but I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, especially I think for couples who were not as already independent as we were.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause that one talks about actually scheduling time apart from each other, as if like,
oh wow,
yeah, it's like for some pretty heavy codependence. But I think when you look at like a lot of other more quote normal in quote relationships, like I think you wind up with that.
Yeah, people spend a lot of time together for sure. Yeah, and getting accustomed to that. Yeah, I love that. We'll definitely link that in the show notes. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for joining us on this series. It's been super fun.
Talking to me or the audience?
I was talking to everybody. But it's always fun having you on the podcast, and I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. I await my offer for residency as co-host.
And what have you decided? You've decided to part ways?
No, I just this is it. This was my run,
this is all you were allotted in the contract. Yeah. Maybe I'll have you on for some guest spots in the future, but yeah, this is my shit. This is my home. But I appreciate you entering it for the last month.
Yeah. Let's go put face masks on and watch The Bachelor.
Yeah, that's 100% what we're about to do. All right. Love you guys. Again, if you are, E&M or poly and are just needing some support, I've opened up peer sessions. So you can book those. There's the link in the show notes. And also if you just go to my TikTok or Instagram to my link tree, you can snag a 30-minute or 60-minute session. I've been having a bunch of them with you, and it's been so beautiful to get to know you all. And as always, there are a little less than 2 weeks left for signing up and enrolling for my School of Fears, Feels, and Fucks. So a lot of you have been interested. Make sure you don't miss out on the enrollment. You can check that all out in the show notes. And until next week, I'll see you on the flip side. You want to do the last one with me? Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Oh my God.
Bye-bye.